My name is Shannon. I'm 80 years old, and I want to begin with something that took me most of my life to understand about sleep, and about the relationship between the body, the mind, and the moment when consciousness releases into rest. Sleep is not something you do. Sleep is something you allow, and that one distinction, so small in words and so enormous in practice, is the difference between lying awake for hours in frustration and sinking into deep rest within minutes. I did not always know this. For many years of my life, sleep was a struggle I had with myself every single night. I would lie down and my mind would not stop. It would review the day. It would prepare for tomorrow. It would enter into old arguments and unfinished business. It would generate fear about things that had not yet happened, and replay regret about things that had already passed. And I would lie there, exhausted, wanting nothing more than sleep. And somehow that very wanting was the thing that kept sleep from arriving. Maybe you know this feeling. Maybe there are nights when your body is tired enough to collapse, but your mind will not release. Maybe you lie down and instead of quiet, you get more noise, more thought, more replaying, more anxious rehearsal of tomorrow. Maybe you have tried everything: counting, breathing techniques, white noise, reading until your eyes close, and still sometimes the sleep that should be simple and natural becomes this elusive thing that seems to require a secret you have never been given. If that is true for you, stay with me. Because what I have learned about the relationship between the mind and sleep goes much deeper than any technique. And once you understand it at that deeper level, sleep changes in a way that techniques alone never quite produce. I was born in northern Thailand, in a time and place where people went to sleep when the sun set and woke when it rose. Sleep was not a problem then, at least not for most people. The body was tired from physical work. The mind was not yet saturated with the kind of continuous stimulation that modern life produces. But when I entered the monastery as a young man, and later when I began to carry the kinds of inner weight that serious practice and serious responsibility bring, sleep became something I had to learn rather than something that simply happened. There were nights in the monastery when I would lie on my mat and feel my mind continuing its day without any intention of stopping. And I would lie there practicing, in a frustrated sort of way, the art of trying to force rest into a system that was still operating at full capacity. The first thing I learned, and it took longer than it should have, was that trying to fall asleep is a contradiction. The trying is itself the problem. Sleep requires surrender, and surrender cannot be forced. The moment you turn sleep into a task, you have already failed at it, because the mind that is trying to achieve sleep is an active mind, a goal-directed mind, a mind that is doing. And sleep requires a mind that has stopped doing. This seems simple, but most people spend years struggling against exactly this truth without seeing it clearly. They approach sleep as they approach everything else in their life, with effort, with will, with the determination that if they do the right things correctly, the outcome they want will arrive. But sleep does not respond to will, it responds to release. You know what surprised me most? When I finally understood this, the change was almost immediate. Not because I had found a technique, because I had understood something true. The understanding itself changed the quality of the moment I lay down. Instead of beginning the familiar project of trying to make sleep happen, I began something entirely different. I began the practice of noticing, just noticing. The weight of the body against the surface, the rise and fall of the breath, the sounds in the room that I had been too occupied with my own thoughts to hear, the temperature of the air on my skin. None of this required effort. It required only the willingness to turn attention toward what was already present. Let me explain what this actually does to the mind and body. When the mind is running, generating thoughts, rehearsing scenarios, making plans, it is producing a kind of physiological activation. The nervous system is responding to mental content as if it were real, present moment experience. Anxiety about tomorrow produces the same kind of physical response as an actual threat. The body does not easily distinguish between a real problem and a thought about a problem. So when you lie down with a mind that is actively working, your body is not getting a clear signal that it is safe to rest. The signal it is receiving is more like continued alert, and bodies do not sleep well in alert mode. When you shift attention to what is actually physically present, to the breath, to sensation, to sound, you are doing something neurologically important. You are giving the nervous system a signal that there is nothing here that requires solving. You are reducing the mental content that the body is responding to as if it were real threat. You are, without any force, beginning to create the conditions for the shift from alert to rest. This is not a trick. It is the actual physiology of how the transition from wakefulness to sleep works when it is not being interfered with by an overactive mind. And here is what I want to say about the breath specifically. Not as a technique to be performed, as something to genuinely attend to. The breath is always happening. It requires nothing from you. It is the most available anchor to the present moment that exists. When you bring genuine attention to the breath, you are not thinking about the breath. You are feeling it. The difference matters. Thinking is the activity you are trying to step back from. Feeling the breath is something subtly different. It happens in the body rather than in the abstract space where thoughts live. And when attention settles into the body rather than remaining in the head, the conditions for sleep change. The natural breath, when you are genuinely attending to it, tends to slow. And as the breath slows, the nervous system follows. This is not something you make happen. It happens because breath and nervous system state are in a feedback loop. You breathe fast when you are stressed. You breathe slowly when you are at rest. But it also works in the other direction. When you allow the breath to slow, even slightly, even without forcing it, the nervous system takes that as a signal that the threat level has reduced, that it is becoming safer to let go of vigilance. But there is something more important than any specific practice, and that is the underlying relationship you have with sleep itself. Many people approach sleep with a kind of desperation, with the accumulated exhaustion of many nights poorly slept, with a fear that tonight will be like the last night, or the night before that. And that desperation, that fear, is itself activating. It is adding to the very problem it is trying to solve. The mind that approaches sleep thinking this better work creates tension that makes sleep less likely. And so a pattern develops. Sleeplessness produces fear of sleeplessness. Fear of sleeplessness produces more sleeplessness, and the cycle continues. Breaking that cycle requires something that is hard to force. It requires a fundamental shift in your relationship to the moment of lying down. Instead of that moment being the beginning of a test you might fail, it needs to become the beginning of a genuine release. Not performed release, not pretended release, genuine release, which means releasing not only the body, but also the project of trying to control what happens next, including the project of trying to make sleep happen. What most people don't realize is that sleep is not waiting to be achieved. It is waiting to be allowed. The system that produces sleep is already in you. It is already running. The only thing that prevents it from taking over is continuous interference from an active, planning, rehearsing, worrying mind. When that interference reduces, sleep comes, sometimes very quickly, because the system that produces it is not weak, it is powerful. It simply cannot operate when the mind is generating the kind of neural activity that signals wakefulness. There is also something important I want to say about the minutes before you lie down, because how you spend those minutes matters enormously for what happens when your head reaches the pillow. A mind that has spent its last hour in front of bright screens, processing stimulating content, making decisions, or engaging in emotionally activating conversations, does not transition easily into rest. It needs a period of slowing, of reduction, of giving the nervous system time to begin its own natural transition. This does not require elaborate routine. It requires the simple recognition that the time before sleep is different from the rest of the day, that it deserves a different quality of engagement, quieter, slower, less demanding, more receptive. For me, the practice that made the most difference in those final minutes was simply sitting in the dark for a few minutes before lying down. Not meditating in any formal sense, just sitting with no task, no screen, no plan, just allowing the mind to begin its natural winding down, without interfering with that process. The darkness itself is important. Light signals the brain that it is time for wakefulness. Darkness signals the brain that it is time to shift towards sleep. Working with that signal rather than against it is something that most people in the modern world no longer do. The other thing I learned about the transition into sleep is the role of releasing the day, not through any formal ritual, but through a genuine willingness to let the day be complete. Whatever happened, happened. Whatever was done is done. Whatever was not resolved will be there tomorrow. And the sleep you are now entering will make you better equipped to face it than the sleeplessness that comes from lying awake worrying about it. This is not resignation, it is practical wisdom. The problems of tomorrow are not solved by the mind that churns through them at midnight. They are better solved by the mind that has rested. At 80 years old, I fall asleep most nights with an ease that I did not have at 40. Not because my life has fewer concerns, because my relationship to the moment of lying down has fundamentally changed. The moment I lie down is no longer the beginning of a struggle. It is a recognition, a turning toward what is already present, the weight of the body, the breath that is already happening, the gradual quieting of a mind that has been given permission to stop for the night. And in that turning, sleep arrives, not because I made it happen, because I stopped preventing it. Tell me in the comments what most keeps your mind active when you lie down at night. What does it return to? What does it rehearse? Sometimes naming it clearly is the first step toward being able to genuinely set it down. And if this message gave you something useful, stay close to this space, because the quality of your sleep is the quality of your recovery. And the quality of your recovery is the quality of everything that follows.